So this video is going to be a little bit different to the videos I usually put out. This is more like a walk-in one, but obviously I'm at my studio, I'm at my desk. I'm just going to be talking a little bit about the CCP. There was some news that came out the other day with Jamie Dimon, the JP Morgan CEO, and I thought I'd cover it, give you my perspective on the whole issue, and just give you guys a little bit of extra content. I'm going on holiday for a few days, so I might be a little bit less consistent with videos over the next 4 or 5 days, but hopefully I've worked hard enough over the last week to make sure that we're not missing out on anything. So regarding the topic of the video, speaking out against the CCP, it's great to see it getting a little bit more popular and a little bit more mainstream. There are now a lot of news organizations that are talking about this sort of thing, but it still has a long way to go. Now, the specific news that made me make this video was Jamie Dimon, obviously, as I said, the JP Morgan CEO, he made a joke. And basically what he said was, I was just in Hong Kong, I made a joke that the Communist Party is celebrating its 100th year. So is JP Morgan, and I'll make you a bet that we last longer. He said that on Tuesday at a Boston event, and then he added, I can't say that in China, they are probably listening anyway. And obviously, they were listening, and outrage ensued, and for a government who has complete authority and control over 1 billion people, they get offended really, really easily. So then Dimon came out and said, I regret and should not have made that comment. He said that in a statement from the bank on Wednesday. He said, I was trying to emphasize the strength and longevity of our company and meant no ill will towards the CCP. Now, the real problem with what he said isn't what he said, it's the fact that he retracted it and the fact that he gave in to the pressure that the CCP no doubt gave him, despite the fact it was just a little joke about the longevity of political parties versus companies. And the truth is that there's a decent chance JP Morgan will last longer than the CCP, and you shouldn't have to hide or retract your statements or fall into hiding if you say something like that. Especially if you're not even Chinese, you don't even live in China, so you have no real reason to be afraid of the backlash. Now, unfortunately for Jamie Dimon, he's not just some random guy, he is the CEO of a huge bank. A worldwide bank, one that has an awful lot of exposure to China. And in particular, they have $20 billion worth of exposure to China and Chinese stocks and their bond market and things like that, which is more than Goldman Sachs, and it's more than Bank of America, and it's like 5 times as much as Morgan Stanley. So maybe it was something that he shouldn't have said in the first place, or maybe his bank shouldn't have this huge exposure to stocks and bonds and financial assets in a country where you have to worry about the jokes you make, because surely that's just not a good idea, is it? A lot of people have called it a Trump-esque gaffe, but he literally didn't say anything bad. It's just the fact that he had to apologize afterwards is pretty shameful. And unfortunately, it's not the only time this sort of thing has happened. We've seen the same thing happen time after time with China in recent years. Cena obviously is an actor and a WWE wrestler, and one time he came out and said Taiwan is a country. He received an awful lot of backlash from people in China because they get offended over the most pathetic things. And so he put out a video which was 1.5 minutes long where he spoke very broken Chinese and apologized to China and retracted his statement and asked for forgiveness for the hurt he caused. But of course, there was no apology for Taiwan afterwards, was there? Or for the Taiwanese people? Because he was ruled by money, and it was nothing to do with what's right or good or honest or actually causing people hurt. It was just about money and his failure to stand up against money and, realize that he's already rich. He doesn't need more money from the Chinese audience, so he doesn't need to pander to the CCP like that, but he does anyway, and it's just a very cowardly decision to make. And unfortunately, it isn't just actors and famous people who we see doing stuff like this. Disney, that multi-billion-pound corporation that we all know, panders to China as well. The film that they put out, I think last year now, Mulan, had a completely whitewashed Tibetan character of the story, who they changed into a white person because they were afraid that if there was a Tibetan person, a character in that story, then they'd get backlash from the Chinese Communist Party, from people in China in general. And it's an utterly shameful thing to do, to completely whitewash a character like that, purely because you're worried about what an authoritarian state might do. Paramount, another billion-dollar film company, removed the Taiwanese flag from Tom Cruise's jacket in the new Top Gun. Why did they have to do that? Well, they didn't. It was a tiny thing, and it probably just would have been edited out on any Chinese versions of the film. But no, they did it, and they ruined the continuity of the film, and they ruined the character that Tom Cruise is playing, and they did it purely because the CCP might not be happy if that were the case. And a lot of people here say things like the CCP isn't actually bad, but categorically it is. It is the worst regime around, at least on a major scale today, and the evidence for it is all around. Peng Shuai, sorry if I butchered her name, I don't speak Chinese, but she's a Chinese tennis player who you've probably heard about, and she's literally been imprisoned and hidden from the public because she was sexually assaulted. We don't know where she is to this day or if she is being abused to this day, but she's basically disappeared off a cliff, and we have no idea about her safety purely because a Communist Party member, an official, sexually assaulted her. Now, if that isn't backwards and utterly medieval, then I really don't know what is, and it's something that everyone should be speaking out against. One person who is actually basically a shining star in all of this and speaking out against China and all sorts of things and the wrongdoings that they're doing is Enes Kanter, who is a basketball player in the US. Now, as someone who isn't American and doesn't follow American sports at all, I'd never heard of him before any of this. But I've seen an awful lot of the activism that he's doing, actual good, meaningful activism that is actually trying to change things in the world, like Hong Kong, Tibet, Taiwan, Uyghur Muslims, and Peng Shuai. He's doing great things. If you don't follow him on Twitter, I'll have a link down below in the description for you to check him out. Really worth following. He's probably only the real high-profile sportsman in the world right now who's actually taking the stand and talking against China. You know, personally, I follow a lot of F1, and you know, Lewis Hamilton wore a gay pride helmet to Qatar this last week, but he has no problem racing in China, where there's a literal genocide occurring in the west of the country, where Hong Kong is having its rights stamped upon, and Tibet as well, and Peng Shuai disappears too. So there are an awful lot of double standards in this sphere, and Enes Kanter is doing so much better than pretty much everyone else, and he really does deserve leagues of credit for that. And in response to that sort of thing, Alibaba's vice chairman, who owns a sports team in the US, but he's basically a puppet of the CCP, he's claiming that opposing the CCP, that organization that murders and oppresses millions of Asian people every year, supports Asian hate. But it just doesn't make any sense, and it's completely inconsistent with any sort of logic or morality. Alibaba, in particular, built facial recognition software for the CCP that identifies Uyghur Muslims so that they can be found and dealt with. It's absolutely horrific, and that's a private company that many people here on YouTube especially have invested in. Personally, I think everyone who has money in that sort of industry, in Chinese companies in general, whether it's VIEs or whatever, you need to think about your morality. You need to think about what sort of company you're supporting and whether you're okay with supporting ethnic genocide happening right now, modern day Nazi Germany, because that's just the reality of what China is today. It is really good to see people starting to speak up. Enes Kanter is doing an incredible job, but there's still far too many people and organizations that are too cowardly to call a cat and oppose the CCP purely because they're worried about losing some money, losing some profits. But at some point, not everything's about money. More money isn't going to make you happy, and there's more to life than money, and morality should be one of those things. Another thing, Jerome Powell has maintained his position at the Fed, which we all expected, but we weren't 100% sure if it were the case. Brainard has been given a slightly less senior position, but she's there as well. And the consensus seems to be that this is more of the same. This is still a dovish Fed. They are still planning on tapering, just in a bit of a slow manner and not for a few months. And they're still planning for interest rate rises in about a year's time, not yet. So we can expect inflation to continue to rise for the time being at the minimum. Maybe they'll get hawkish when it hits the fan and it all gets much worse, but to be honest, continuity seems to be all that Biden cares about. He doesn't seem to actually care about tackling the problems that we're facing, and the fact that the two options for the Fed were both very dovish sort of pushes that idea further. Again, this was just a quick video, a little bit off topic as well. I know I usually talk about finance stuff and some people don't like it when I talk about China and the CCP, but this is my channel and I'll talk about what I want. And if you don't like hearing about an authoritarian state that's oppressing people and dismantling human rights, then you don't have to watch the video, or you can just unsubscribe from the channel. I really won't be missing anything if I don't have some genocide deniers in the comments. I'm more than happy for that to be the case. I'm probably going to have a couple walk-in videos this week, just trying to get some content out for you guys, keeping up on the news, letting you know what happens, what my opinions are on some things that do happen, because I'm not going to be in this house, I'm not going to be with my studio. So hopefully I've made enough content in advance to not have a weird upload schedule, but hopefully I can also interspace some walk-in videos out, maybe even on the beach. But it's very windy and cold, so I don't know how that kind of video will turn out. If you're new to the channel, if this is your first time seeing me, well, sometimes I do full-on scripted videos where I plan everything in advance and it's more like sort of an essay. And then sometimes I do videos like this where I just sort of ramble and talk and rant at a camera. If you like more videos like this, then check out our Patreon. There's going to be more of them going up over time that won't be public for the rest of YouTube. So that's something to consider. As always, there's affiliate links down below in the description. One for masterworks.io, a site for fractional shares for fine art, and another for BLOCKFI, which is a crypto earn platform where you can earn interest up to 9%, I think, on stable coins or Bitcoin or Ether or whatever crypto you hold. Thanks for all the support recently. Thanks for watching. Stay stoic. Until next time.